شهيد حبيب الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وشهيد حبيب الله لا إله إلا الله.
The revolution in Libya began gaining momentum in February of 2011 as rebel forces fought to oust the oppressive, nearly 40-year reign of dictator Gaddafi, who was killed in October of 2011. Gaddafi responded to protests with extreme intolerance, and violence was rampant throughout the country during the 6 months of rebellion and retaliation from the government. The West showed support to the rebels through weeks of bombing by NATO, which led to the overrunning of Tripoli in late August. President Obama coordinated an American military assault in order to protect Libyan civilians, warning against a looming genocide. The country was declared liberated 3 days after the death of Gaddafi on October 20th. Libya gained independence in 1951, and Gaddafi seized power in September of 1969, outlining his main goal as spreading Libya's influence in Africa. He soon after declared a people's revolution, changed the country's name to the Great Socialist People's Libyan Arab Republic, and set up revolutionary committees. These actions led quickly to economic decline and public unrest. In 1972, the U.S. withdrew its ambassador from Libya after Gaddafi repeatedly denounced the West and America in his speeches and public statements, and 7 years later, after a mob in Libya ransacked the U.S. Embassy, America cut off all relations altogether. The relationship gradually deteriorated. In 1986, Reagan accused Gaddafi's regime of ordering the bombing of a German disco that killed 2 American servicemen and 1 other. As a response, the U.S. bombed Tripoli and Benghazi. Pan Am Flight 103 was destroyed by a bomb over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988, killing 270 people. It was claimed that Gaddafi ordered the bombing, and Libya took full responsibility for the deaths. Following the event in 1992, the United Nations imposed heavy sanctions in an effort to force Libya to hand over 2 of the suspects in order to have a trial. Under the presidential rule of George W. Bush, relations with Libya turned around significantly. In 2002, Libya and the U.S. held talks to mend relations after years of hostility, and in December of 2003, Libya pledged to abandon all programs to develop weapons of mass destruction. Gaddafi was the first leader of any Arab nation to strongly come forward and denounce the September 11th attacks, and fully backed American invasion of Afghanistan. Gaddafi reportedly shared intelligence files on al-Qaeda with the U.S. government. In May of 2006, the U.S. resumed full diplomatic ties with Libya, and in 2008, former U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice made a historic visit to Libya, the first of its nature since 1953, and said that relations between the U.S. and Libya have entered a new phase. The oil reserves in Libya are the largest in Africa, producing some 1.3 million barrels of oil a day in 2010. The majority of their oil is exported to European markets, particularly Italy. In 1956, Libya granted 2 American oil companies a concession of roughly 14 million acres, the first action from the newly independent nation to cede oil control to America. Before Gaddafi took power, in 1961, the King of Libya opened up a pipeline to the Mediterranean, making it possible for Libya to export oil for the first time. In the following years, Libya's oil exportation would increase rapidly. However, after the political turmoil between the West and Libya beginning in the 1970s, America cut off much dependence on Libya for oil. In 2005, as relations were reestablished, Libya's first auction of oil exploration licenses brought back U.S. companies for the first time in over 20 years. America and European countries have a large economic stake in Libya, primarily because of the lucrative source of oil and gas that it possesses. Because of this, the U.S. had a greater motivation to aid the Libyan revolution in order to halt the quickly rising domestic oil prices that threatened the U.S. economy as a direct result. In February of 2011, oil prices in America spiked amidst the turmoil in Libya. Heightened oil prices in the U.S. mean stagnated growth because consumers and businesses are hit directly by raised fuel prices. On the 23rd of February 2011, in the midst of the revolution, crude oil prices reached $100 a barrel in the U.S., the highest price in over 2 years. It was estimated that over 1 million barrels of Libyan oil had been removed from the world market in late February. Economists reacted with concern because if in 2011 oil prices would continue to stay at their raised levels, they could greatly weaken the already struggling global economy. The economy of America and of the entire world rested on how the Libyan revolution would play out, and it was in America's best interest to speed up the affair. Harsh rulers in the Middle East were systematically turned against by their own people in the Arab Spring. America assumedly is enthusiastic about the global spread of democracy, particularly in the oil-rich part of the world concerned. During the uprisings in Libya, the U.S. worked with NATO and, though initially declared to be impartial to the conflict, eventually changed strategies and became a decisive force in the outcome. NATO air forces damaged or destroyed over 5,000 military targets in Libya, and the U.S. separately provided rebels with military training and weapons. America had a strong desire to set Libya on the road towards democracy and manifested this goal by helping to oust Gaddafi. Images of violent crackdowns resulting in a civil war spread quickly over the internet of February and March of 2011. In order to stop the spread of violence and to protect security interests, the U.S. swept in quickly to aid Libyan rebels. When rationalizing America's decision to intervene, Obama was careful about highlighting the need to protect the civilian population above any other interest.
The United States of America has played a unique role as an anchor of global security and as an advocate for human freedom. Military jets and helicopter gunships were unleashed upon people who had no means to defend themselves against assaults from the air. Confronted by this brutal repression and a looming humanitarian crisis, I ordered warships into the Mediterranean. A city nearly the size of Charlotte could suffer a massacre that would have reverberated across the region and stained the conscience of the world.
As White House officials warned that an imminent human catastrophe was looming, it was in America's best interest, in terms of maintaining positive foreign relations, to step forward and lend a helping hand to an endangered civilian population.